one point they were like, oh, he fumbled at the 1 yard line. I like threw my hat down. I'm like, save the Butterfingers for Halloween. Let me guess, you're pretending to be a football player. Start the van, coach. And I'm like yelling. I'm like going all out. And I was like, when I left there, everybody who walked out was like gassed. And I'm like, it was the day that was like 104 out. Oh my God. But it was cool to like leave it all out there and do it. I like when I can hear myself I feel like I should have been a narrator for a series.
You absolutely should have.
Once upon a time. I was actually the narrator for Beauty and the Beast for my local dinner theater. That was something I was big into theater growing up. My parents had friends who owned a dinner theater, and so I did like tap and jazz and singing and acting lessons from like really young. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. I was really into that because you're into that, right?
Oh yeah. That's all I do.
You're still, so that's your deal.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you perform at, or do you have a home base, or?
So I live in Philly. I moved to Philly back when I was like 18, 19, and I've been living there ever since. I went to school for theater. I went to school for acting. Unfortunately, my college no longer exists. So.
Oh no! What was it? What was it called?
It was University of the Arts in Philadelphia.
Oh my goodness! I remember that was a huge deal when that went down. Yeah. That's heartbreaking. Well, I should introduce you because I'm being very rude right now to our guests. But today's a very special guest because it's my first former student in the house, Morgan McConnell in the house. I'm so excited because it's all students here. I'm looking at a former student producing. I got a former student guest. And you were a class of 2013?
Yes.
I was just doing the math before, and I was like, oh, that means she's 30? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't know that means I'm really old. That means I'm very old. No, wow, 2013. So you got out, you went to college for acting, and then you just started finding opportunities.
I did, yeah. So I initially took a gap year because I didn't figure out that I wanted to go into the theater world until probably end of junior year. I don't know if you remember this, but sophomore year I was in a really bad car accident.
I do recall.
Yeah, and that was a huge life-changing event for me. And that is actually how I got into theater.
Okay.
Yeah, so I took a gap year and I started just working really hard on being more involved in theater because I didn't really do a ton of that prior to.
So like in high school you weren't in any of the...
I did 2 of them.
At the very end of your high school career?
Sorry, 3 of them. Yeah, I did sophomore, junior, and senior year. And sophomore year, when I went to audition, I was still like in a cast and everything like that. Yeah.
But you get the part though.
I did.
There you go. Well, that's awesome.
I was just teacup number 2.
Teacup number 2. Hey, I was tree number 4 in 2nd grade at the nativity scene. So
amazing.
We start somewhere, So
we
that's
sure
awesome.
Do.
Oh, that's great. So, all right. And currently, you have anything in the works? You doing anything exciting?
Yes. So about 3 years ago, I would say I really just fully committed to being a full-time artist. So I am an actor and a poet, which is a wild new development for me. And yeah, I do both of those things full-time. I'm a full-time performer and a part-time educator and facilitator. I am a murder mystery actor.
Love it.
And I am also like I said, a freelance poet. I work with 2 different nonprofits, one in LGBTQ rights and community services, and the other one is in suicide prevention and outreach for people who've been affected by it as well as prevention.
Oh my goodness, that is, I do recall, because you were a part of, I guess they used to call it GSA in high school, right?
Yes.
Now it's different, it's like Equity Alliance is that right? You recall?
I have no idea what it's called.
It's something now. There's another term for it or whatever. But yeah, I remember because we didn't have that growing up, and like anybody who's listened to this before knows that I have quite the queer family myself. So that was something that in 80 Scranton in my Catholic school, you just didn't talk about it. You know what I mean? So like there
room
was no avenue for anybody to discuss that. And so I do recall, because you just reminded me before we started rolling, that I came into the GSA meeting, right? So I don't really have much of a recollection. I'm dying to know what's for your perspective when I coming in there. Do you recall any of it?
Oh yeah, I think about it often.
What? Okay, then I'm very interested in this.
So you came in to the GSA, and at that point, you were also like the first male teacher to ever really come into, at that time, what the GSA looked like. It was being run by two wonderful women, but they didn't, at least to my knowledge, have like a huge connection to being queer. And
they just wanted to be supportive of
which is a beautiful thing,
That's
a beautiful thing. But you came in and you started talking about your mom and her whole experience of realizing that she was gay, and just like how you also grew up in like a pretty Catholic, I think it was. Yeah, very Catholic household, and how that was also like a really interesting transition, not only for you, but for your mom and your family.
Yeah.
And it was really eye-opening to me, because I was somebody who came from a really strong Catholic background. Both of my parents are Italian, and
It's almost a given. Yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. It's not even it's not even about the religion at that point. It's about the tradition.
That's right.
In our family. So I was really struggling, and I was actually still a little in the closet. And you talking about like your mother's story of, excuse me, realizing that she was gay later in life, and already having a family, and like coming to terms with that, and then finding a partner, and you talking about your experience as a young child going through like a divorce and being in that atmosphere, and then also like still being able to like love both your dad and your mom, and then also your mom's partner when she came into the picture. It is still something that I recall every day.
Oh my God!
I'm not gonna lie.
I'm glad you said that, because I remember when I decided to do that, because it was that, and it was a big deal for me to do that, because it was sort of, myself living in the closet. I joke in my act that I felt like I grew up in witness protection. Like I had to update the dossier. We just called her Aunt Colleen in public and hope nobody asked questions. Like that kind of thing. And I just remember at a certain point in college for me is when I first met friends of mine who were now gay or lesbian, and I'm like, oh wow, I can talk about this now. Like I had no representation growing up in even my friend base or whomever, and so that I felt like once college hit, I really was on this mission to not hide anymore, because it's like weird when you lie about stuff. When you lie as a kid about the smallest of things, you just lose who you are in that, because you're always pretending to be something you're not. And whether it's someone in my situation, which is a very rare situation, it's more applicable to the people like my mom and my dad who were growing up in a situation where they felt they couldn't be who they were. I don't know if I mentioned this in them, but they both tried to go into the seminary first. That was their first line of defense, was like, okay, well, let me go to the one place where it's, I can like not have those urges or not, do whatever. And then they both met at a Jesuit university after they both bailed on that initial plea. And then they're like, okay, well, let's try to play house. And then, so there was like multiple layers to them trying to do what their parents traditionally would have wanted for them. And I think that was the piece for them. They wanted their parents to feel like they didn't want to rock the boat with the tradition. So I know, at least I felt mostly for my dad, I know he didn't really fully commit to the lifestyle until after both his parents had passed. And I get that. I think a lot of people, we come from our parents, we feel like we owe them something sometimes, but I don't think we owe them hiding our identity,
Absolutely.
It's interesting. So, okay. And I had you as a student. How many classes did I have with you? Do you recall? At least two, maybe?
Yeah, I
Latin
think
1, Latin 2?
Latin 1 and Latin 2. I wasn't good enough to be in honors Latin. I think you had honors Latin 2 or something like that at the time.
Yeah.
But I only had you for Latin, and it's funny, I always thought Latin was such an unusual topic to teach at a high school.
Yeah.
But I partially kept taking it because I loved the way you taught. You were so about the stories and the actual history
Yeah.
of what went into, this dead language. And that to me is something that has always stuck with me because I'm obviously as an
Storyteller.
actor, a storyteller.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of the stories that you would tell in Latin, in both Latin 1 and Latin 2, are things that also stuck with me.
That's cool. I only did that because the only time I ever heard Latin was in the Catholic school I was going to growing up. And like Sister Doreen sounded like the exorcist when we walked by her classroom. And I'm like, I am not teaching it like that. So yeah, because even that, I was like, I wanted to put my own stamp. Yeah, because you want it to be engaging. It's a public school too, so it's like everything's a little different. And for me, it was like in college, I started as a Spanish major, but I really fell in love with Latin later in life. Like my senior year, I think I took Latin in high school, and I really liked. I was just good at it. I was just easy to memorize. My brain was trained for that. So. And I loved the history. I loved seeing something in a building description or on a flag and like decoding it or being like, oh, I can figure out what that means. Like there's something engaging and fun about that, especially. So I love that aspect of it. So I think that.
I still do that too.
I wanted to bring that into it. Yeah. I remember being in New Orleans and I was probably pretty hammered at the time, but like I saw like a building inscription. I'm like, I want to know what that means. And it was just like built in 1897 or something. But like, so it took me longer than it should have because of the alcohol. But I still was fat. Every time we left the hotel, I'm like, I'm going to figure that out. But yeah, I think that part of me was what I loved about it. So I was hoping to spread because I didn't want it to be like an elitist thing. I think Latin, I studied it in college, and then in college I got a grant to stay for the summer and do a summer fellowship. And my project was finding a way to put Latin into public middle schools. That was my thesis, was that there's something there for everybody. It's not this elitist thing. And it's really great for kids now who have audio processing issues and don't want to take a language that they have to speak and listen to, because that can be super challenging. And my wife's a learning support teacher, so I get how that can be for a lot of kids. So it's a way for some of them to still get a language without having to do things that are outside of what they can handle. So I'm glad to hear you say that. I was trying to think of who else was in. I was trying to think of. I can't even think of the class. Like it's so after 20 years, like they all meshed together.
I could call out some names.
I can't imagine. I'm trying to think even what room. I can visualize the year because now it's like, wow, 2013. That is when you graduated. So yes. I must have had you probably like 2010 maybe.
2010, yeah.
So I was like I was only 4 or 5 years into teaching at that point.
Yes, I remember you were really new, and I don't know if you remember at the time, but the high school had just gotten that wing, the middle school wing built onto it.
That's right.
Yes. So when I didn't go to ONJ my entire education.
Yeah.
I only started there in 8th grade.
Okay.
And I was like one of the first classes to be in the middle school wing. And I remember they were trying to, make space for all of these kids so that they didn't have to be in the middle school. The middle school was being redone. And you didn't quite have a classroom.
No.
So you were
I still
kind
don't.
of. Oh no! Oh no!
I did for a good portion of the middle of those years, but yeah, no.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's
to hear
okay.
That. You're actually in someone's room who's a little bit of a controversial topic to talk about with ONJ history.
What?
You were in Mr. Wright's room.
Oh, Mr. Rott's room.
Rott, that's right, Rott.
I was like, Mr. Wright. Oh, now I remember. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yes, that was. Yeah, especially now I haven't talked to that guy in a long time. Yeah, it's. Was that his room? Oh, yeah, I guess I was in his room.
Yeah. Yeah. You were in his room.
Yeah. We've the school unfortunately has had a little bit of a bout. I think with a couple of different teachers in that era, which is an unfortunate thing for sure. Even I remember I had a kid that I went to high school with that ended up becoming like an athletic director as well. And it's amazing when you have people, and even the Catholic Church has had issues with abuse. And it's something that I know as a teacher, like it's heartbreaking for me because as either whether it's a colleague or whether it's a kid, because we talked about this on a previous episode. I did a former teacher in who had, we often have to report things with anything, like kids who mention stuff about their parents, or during COVID there was a lot of home abuse that kids were sort of crying for help in Zoom calls in ways that so it's like, as a teacher, I think some people don't realize the extra pieces, like, oh, we're here to teach Latin, we're here to do this, but you also have to keep an ear out and an eye out for things that could be happening in other areas too, because that's it's an unfortunate thing. Just like the school shootings and things like that. There's all of these things in our culture that school's a microcosm of society, so you're gonna have the good and the ugly in that for sure. But yeah, I don't remember. That's funny because I'm in a bunch of rooms even this year, which is like insane. But yeah, and so now, that was you when you're like 15, 16. Now you're 30.
I know.
I mean, this is, wow. So it's just like, because that means I'm 42, doing the math. Wow, yeah. So, and your family's super supportive of everything you're doing? And
oh, yeah. I mean, I think my parents always knew that I was going to go into something that was really unusual. My father is a full-time musician.
Oh, that's right. I think I did remember that. Okay.
Yeah, he's a freelance bass player, and he plays all over the world. And that's, I mean, especially in his side of the family, that's pretty normal. Pretty much everybody on his side of the family is a full-time artist in some way, shape, or form.
So there is a tradition here, at least now.
There is a tradition, yeah. And my mother, she makes jewelry from scratch. She cuts the stones. She does the casting, so like molds the metal around it and everything. Yeah. So my parents
very into like creating, and there's so many people consume. We all consume, but it's amazing when you see it. That's for me even now, like switching from like, okay, I created lessons and all of that as a teacher and trying to create moments, but now like this shift in my life since COVID of like, oh, I'm gonna be a performer myself and an entertainer is wild. I mean, if you said to me 5 years ago that I'd be doing this, I'd have been like, oh, you're crazy, like that. And now I can't imagine doing anything else. Like, and hearing you talk about making the switch to a full-time performer while I'm like literally in the middle of making all of those decisions too. It's like, it's scary. So I can relate. Like that's, it is. It's a scary thing because even that's where I'm at right now. Like I'm teaching part-time now the last couple of years. So I've only teaching like half-time because like, I'm a 42-year-old guy with a family and, you build 20 years into a pension, but at the same time, I think you probably identify with this. When I think about that, I'm like, oh, if I were to say, oh, I'm going to stay in this for a pension, that would seem to me like a little bit of a sellout and a little soul crushing a little bit to be. Yeah. I want to stay in it because I feel like there's kids that I'm making a difference with, or I want to feel like it because, I've always been passionate about spreading culture and language and doing that. Those are reasons that I can say, okay, yes, I'll stay even doing part-time for that. But if it's just because I think I need to pay into a pension that may or may not be there in 15 years, that to me is not enough, So it's like I had a couple rough years, if I'm being honest. Last year and the year before, the students, we just weren't jiving. And it was different because like the year before I took a sabbatical, so I studied autism at Westchester University.
Oh, wow.
And so I took the fall off and to just focus on the coursework. And then I went back halfway through the year, but I had a full class load of Latin, and the kids had this other teacher for the first half. So then they had to adjust to me after her, and it took the whole second half of the year just to fight back against that adjustment. Mm-hmm. Not that she was not qualified or anything. She was great. It was just the difference of two different people, two different styles, and she was not classically trained in teaching, but was classically trained in Latin and had been a college counselor for years. So like there were just certain things that I was requiring to do that they hadn't been asked to do, and now they're like, well, why do we have to do that? We haven't done that. So I was fighting an uphill battle all year with some of the students with that, which made it less than pleasurable to teach. And then this year, I just had 3 Spanish 1 classes. And in the high school, I don't know if it's probably a little different than you were there. In 7th and 8th grade, they technically take like level 1 of the language spread over 2 years so that there's more time to do fun stuff and all this stuff. And then they're supposed to come into high school ready for a level 2 because they've had so much time with the level 1 material. But if you're in Spanish 1 and in the high school, that means that you either couldn't take a language because you didn't qualify because you had too much remedial stuff to do with reading and writing and math, or like you somehow bombed 2 years of a language and now had to take it. So there was a different population that qualifies for it that needs a lot of attention. And in today's age, you're battling extra stuff. Not only do they all have ADHD and half of them don't recognize or medicate, but then you also have these things and Chromebooks. Like you're literally giving them.
Oh wow!
Every kid has a Chromebook, so they have tabs open like madness. You can see the ADHD in real time on all the tabs that they have open and how they're flipping through. So I don't have any of their attention. I never at any given point in any lesson have everyone's attention in the classroom. You know, like there's no. Like even when I was teaching back when you were there was moments where we could have a class discussion or I could tell a story and people would listen. Right. Now if I tell a story, there's somebody else also telling their own story over here and over there and over there. And so it's just the noise and the disengagement is there. And it's like, who do I listen to? Do I listen to him? Do I listen to her? Do I listen to, you can't help. It's like the noise pollution in the room. So that is a little disheartening, too, because now it's like the storytelling, the things I like to do, I don't feel like I can do effectively anymore because they're not tuned in. And that it's like half of them are like texting and driving. Like they're just not paying attention. All of a sudden there's a quiz and then they hit the tree because they just don't know. So it provides challenges. So like the entertainment form of having a microphone and having 100 people or 300 people or 1,000 people listening to me, like I'm like, oh my God, this is great. This is like what's, so it's, I love that part of it. And I'm sure like when you're performing, there's this adrenaline and this high that happens,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's the biggest performance? What was your like biggest performance that you did that you were just like, so couldn't believe you got? Like, is there a part that you can remember that you were like so amped up about getting?
Sure. In both fields, both in poetry and in acting, I've been blessed so far in my beginning stages of my career to have success like that. So for acting, it was actually here in Westchester that I've got my first huge gig on the stage. It was at the Upton Kenower Performing Arts Center.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned to me earlier that you were a tap dancer. I also am a semi-professional tap dancer. I work with a group called UCTT, Uniting Colleges Through Tap. They used to perform out of my alma mater that no longer exists. Or, well, I guess I don't know. Can you call an alma mater your college an alma mater, or is that really only for high school?
No, alma mater. No, because it's Latin for nourishing mother. So it's like it's provided you, because even though it doesn't exist, like the moments, they can't take away the moments that you had there that shaped who you are. And that's really when we say alma mater, what we're honing in on. We're honing in on the pieces of the experiences you had there that have carried you to where you are today, which is, So, okay, so a tap. So I'm not, you said, I did not profess to be a semi-professional tap. I can ball change with the best of them, but I wouldn't use professional in any sense of the word. But yeah, no, that's cool. So yeah, but little known fact, not many people. That might have been a fun fact about me that nobody's known is I took some tap dancing. Yeah. That's cool. So you were doing tap for this particular performance too?
So no, but that's actually how I found out about the audition.
Oh.
So I worked with this tap company, and I have for about past 10, 12 years. And they had a performance at the Upton Kenower. I was singing with them because we used to do this like little tap trio of the director would tap, I would sing, and we'd bring in like a musician to accompany us.
Okay.
And there was an audition notice for a show that was coming from the West Coast to make its East Coast premiere, and it was a true story. And I auditioned and I got in. It's called Soul Harmony. Excuse me. It's about Sonny Till and the Orioles, which was a doo-wop group in the 1940s, and they are credited as having the first female producer, as well as being the first doo-wop group to be in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and I got to, so it was my first time playing a real person. I played the best friend to the producer, Deborah Chesler. That's the producer's name. I played her best friend, Helen Stern, and I actually got to talk to the real-life Helen Stern on the phone.
To prep for the role.
And I got to meet so many people who, were either related to these, these men or to Deborah. It was just an incredible experience. And yeah, it was like my first real big paycheck as an actor, and also my first just big role where I got to, have a little singing solo. I did a little duet, a little dance duet, and now I'm on the back of the CD forever.
Oh, that's exciting. That's cool, especially when you get to immerse yourself in a role that's like a rich role that has got layers to it, and it's not just, tree number 4 or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly.
We've come a long way.
We've come a long way
That's
from
cool.
teacup number 2 and
teacup
tree number 4.
2. And what was and then you had a poetry one as well?
Yes, actually, that was really recent. So as a poet, there's a bunch of different things that you can do. You can be a spoken word poet, which is usually more rhythm based, and there's kind of a musical flow to it. You can be just like a regular poet, and of course I'm a poet who does spoken word. And then you can also be a competition poet. I don't really know if I am a competition poet, but I just started doing a few slam competitions, and I did my first one in Reading recently, and it was for a sold-out crowd. And as competitions tend to work, you're scored and whatnot, and I lost in my round by .04 of a point. Yeah, and so many people came up to me afterwards to say, "We think you should have won in your group. We thought you should have won in your group."
Yes.
And just to know that I was on that stage and the entire room was breathing with me and listening
that's such
to
a great
me.
way to phrase it.
Yeah, it just it was so powerful. I mean, I just felt like I was almost like a conductor.
Yeah.
Laying this story out, and everybody's just really receptive and really into it. And honestly, there's no greater feeling as a performer than just, as you were saying, like all of these eyes and ears just on
in
you.
Unison, yeah.
In unison.
What are you feeling right before they announce you to come out for those kind of things?
It's a little bit of a mixture of oh shit and also like I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah.
Because there really isn't anything else that I could see myself doing.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I think back to the days in high school where everybody's talking about what college they're going to go to and what they're going to do with their lives. And, I'd be sitting in Latin class. I would have no idea what I was going to do with my life. I had no idea where I was going to go to college. I had one parent that went to college, one parent that sort of went to college and then dropped out. To go live on Bourbon Street and be a professional musician. So, it's the kind of thing where my parents were like, oh, whatever you want to do. Yeah. So you go to school and everybody's like, I'm going to be this in college and I'm going to do this after college. And I was sitting in your class going, I don't know what in the hell I'm going to do with my life.
I think a lot of people, I remember myself being like at the end of high school, I had a vision, like I switched schools, like my junior year, I went to 3 different schools, and I went to a prep school, kind of like the Hill School my last year, and that was such a drastic change from me from where I grew up, because these were all rich kids, who had trust funds, and my college fund was in a Coinstar jar, it was like not the same, we were not the same people. They had boat shoes, and I had sneakers that squeaked when I walked, so it was like, we were not the same people, but I could start envisioning what like that would be. And I actually was going to go into the seminary for a period of time because I did a lot of youth group stuff, and I really liked connecting with people because when I would help facilitate, I really enjoyed facilitating some of the activities, and I really liked connecting with people. Not necessarily that I was like, into God in a way that was like, let me walk around the neighborhood and knock on your door and try to convince you about the word. I enjoyed the connections with people. I enjoyed the icebreakers we would do. I enjoyed leading them. And I was like, oh, maybe this is what I should do. Maybe I should get into where I can keep having, meeting people and doing that. And I thought to do that. And I'll never forget this because I didn't really talk to my dad a lot at that point in my life. We were sort of estranged a little bit. And I did talk to him then because my grandma had passed away, his mother. And it was right at the end of my high school senior year. I was deciding where I was going to go. And he said, it'll be there. If you really feel like you should do that, it'll be there. So, like, don't feel like you got to rush into that. And I think that was kind of him being like, listen, I rushed into that or I did that. Wow. And I do remember making that. And then I didn't know what college to go to. Like, I felt like every college was the same. Like the Gettysburg or Sinus, Franklin and Marshall. I mean, all of these good Dickinson, like, all these colleges where I felt like you just put it. At one point, I'm just like, well, put them in a hat. We'll pick one out. Yeah. And I picked Ursinus. One, they had given me a good amount of money, but then I realized it because their tuition was so expensive. And then my grandma lived nearby. And at that point, when I committed in the fall, I didn't know she was going to pass in the spring. But that was the decision I made, and I went with it. And I still wasn't sure what I was doing. I went in as like a neuroscience major. Really? And I was going to do like psychology, and because I was in a lot of therapy for obvious reasons. So I was like, maybe I can help people that way in the way that I was getting help, and so I thought about that. But then it was all statistics and like rat like surveys and like what rats are doing and how like it was too far disconnected from the work that I wanted to do with human beings. So then I was like, okay, this doesn't fit right. And then I was like, and then my advisor, who you just got randomly based on, like they just kind of divide up all the teachers and you get an advisor your freshman year, but it's just not because you don't know what you're going to do yet. Right. And mine was the Spanish department chair. And so she convinced me to go to Madrid because she knew that I went to Argentina in high school and had done a trip, and I took Spanish, but I hated it because when I got there, I couldn't speak Spanish and I was so frustrated. And I just found people that spoke English and hung out and drank and smoked and did all the things you shouldn't do.
Nice.
That you're kind of supposed to do, even though you're not supposed to do, but you're supposed to do it. And then so I just was there for the crazy experience. And but then I was grateful for it because then it got me into when I went to Spain in college. I said to myself, I look back at how I did when I was 16 in Argentina, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it differently this time. I'm really going to try. I'm going to put forth. And that kind of created a whole new avenue. So I'm like, all right, well, I really enjoyed that. Maybe I can, create those opportunities for that. And that's what that's sort of where I went from there. But now that I look back at it and I'm like, oh, wow, here I am 20 years later, it's just not as fulfilling. Like even COVID changed I don't know about you guys, but for me, COVID was where the switch happened. COVID was where the priorities realigned again and said, okay, well, here you are. Let's take some inventory. And I really started helping teachers with technology during the pandemic. So I switched from being a teacher to being a technology coach. And that happened before the pandemic. They got a bunch of new devices, and we were about to give all the kids Chromebooks. And they were afraid they were going to be heavy paperweights because the teachers didn't know what a Chromebook was. So then I became the guy that helped the Flintstones meet the Jetsons. I was the one that was just like, I knew how to use them. People were already naturally kind of like the older teachers. Like, I don't know if there's these two older Spanish women teachers who were sweethearts, Heyer and Wilson, or Heyer and Henninger.
Oh, yes. I do remember those two.
Yeah. They would have been, I equate them to, did you ever watch The Muppets? They were like the female version of the two guys in the balcony. Like if you put them in any faculty meeting, they were side-eyeing and doing just like the two of them were doing in the balcony. And they were the sweetest people. So they would always, after a meeting, come to my room and be like, all right, you need to translate that for us. And then COVID put them over the edge. They're like, okay, we're done. We're not doing this. So they ultimately pushed them into retirement. And then I started seeing that, and I was really into helping people with technology. I started a tech team with all the students at school that wanted to help the teachers and help their fellow students, and I found this renewed sense within education. I'm like, okay, this is my calling. Now I'm going to help teachers teach. So instead of just affecting my 100 students, I'm affecting all 1,600 students because I'm affecting all 100 teachers now. Wow. And then I was helping these, and I still got my connection to students because I started the club where all the kids who were home could sit on a Google Meet and kids could just pop in if they had questions so that the teacher didn't have to answer the password questions. They could say, go to the tech pack, they'll help you. And it was really cool. And then the school, well, we after COVID, we had a bunch of changes in administration, and they're just like, yeah, we're not going to fund this position anymore, so you're just going to go back to being a Spanish and Latin teacher. And I was like, oh, that was my new calling. And I tried to go to other districts, and but every district was like saying, we're not going to fund this position, even though it's so helpful, and you've proven it's helpful, and there's data showing it's helpful. They were just like, everybody was just still so burnt out from COVID that I think on that end, the leadership wasn't leading, in my mind, properly. So that's when it was kind of like, all right, now maybe it's now time to make a shift out. But I'm still in education. I'm teaching comedy now, and I love doing that. So I just started my advanced level comedy class at Soldier.
Oh yeah!
And one of the first things I did when I decided to start doing comedy was I took a Zoom class with a place called the American Comedy Institute in New York City, because I read a book. The first thing I did when I said I was going to do comedy is the teacher in me was like, oh, let me read a book on it. And I read a book called Mastering Stand-Up by a guy named Steve Rosenfield, who's been teaching in New York City for 35 years. And he's taught people like, Hannah Gadsby, Jim Gaffigan have taken courses, Michelle Buteau, if you know her, Jess Kierson.
Yeah.
So he's had all of this success, and he runs these workshops that anybody can take. Took one online, and now I'm his director of operations. I'm like his assistant. So I do everything. I run the entire school for him. And he just started, I was all clerical, but he just started asking me to run a course. So now in the September, I'm going to be teaching a virtual turning stories into stand-up class.
Ooh.
So it's just an honor that this guy who's been doing it for 35 years, renowned in the field, best-selling book on it, was like, yeah, we'll have you teach a class in September because he's going to be away for the month, so he wants the school to have some offerings. So his son is actually doing a really cool acting in sitcoms, comedies, and plays. Because his son is an actor. He's been in movies on Hulu, Netflix, Prime. He was in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Oh, nice.
So I'm actually going to go up and take the class as part of it. I'm going to go audit his class, because I'm trying to get in acting. I just had my first callback for a NFL YouTube TV commercial last week.
Oh, that's huge.
I know. So I did the audition, did the video, and then they said, hey, the director wants you to come in and meet. And I'm like, oh, the director wants to meet me. And I walked in, the waiting room was full of like 40 people.
Right. But still, I mean, there was probably hundreds and hundreds of people.
Because even after that, it was just a flow. Because I have a buddy who also had gotten a call back that's an actor that I do another podcast with. And I talked to him later because he's a model and actor. He's been doing it forever. So I was asking for him some advice. And he said when he was there an hour after me, it was still full. But when I walked in, the guy in charge looked up. As soon as I walked in the door, he was like, hey, Jay. Like, he knew me. And I'm like, oh, so, like, clearly I'm recognizable in some sense.
Yeah. That's a really good sign.
So that was a good sign. And I went full out on the thing, but I think I went too far out because they were like, can you be more casual? And I'm just like throwing my hat down because it was like you had to be a mega fan watching the TV and watching a football game, and they were giving you scenarios of what was happening.
Oh, cool.
And I could see I was making them laugh with some improv, and I was listening to some of the other groups that went in front of me because you can kind of hear them through the wall.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, they're at a 5. I'm going up to 11 on this.
But I mean, that's the really good thing is if you're in a callback or an audition and they have to ask you to bring it back a little bit, that's a good thing, because if they ask you, and this was something I was taught in college and got my degree in, if they have to tell you to pull it back, that's really good, because if they have to tell you to bring more, that is when you're in hot water and you're probably not going to make the cut.
That makes sense.
So
that's a good note. Well, they were giving me a lot of attention. They're like, oh, and they were like trying to direct my gaze to, I guess, wherever the point was going to be. So they weren't taught the other two, because we tested with 2 other people. It was groups of 3 when you did the testing part. And so, I felt like I was getting a lot of their attention, and I was cracking some jokes that I could hear them laughing at, because they were like, one point they were like, oh, he fumbled at the 1-yard line. I threw my hat down. I'm like, save the Butterfingers for Halloween. Let me guess, you're pretending to be a football player. Start the van, coach. And I'm like yelling. I'm like going all out. And I was like, when I left there, everybody who walked out was like gassed. And I'm like, it was the day that was like 104 out. Oh my God. But it was cool to like leave it all out there and do it. And I didn't hear back. It was Tuesday. I haven't heard back since. And now I guess we're at Sunday. So I was like, at this point, they're filming next week. But it was a cool experience. And like, I'm like, well, this is the first of many. My next goal, I keep doing yearly goals for myself. As I started getting into entertainment, like first year was like 100 open mics, and that was during COVID, so it was quite a feat. And I did it. I did it in 9 months, and then it was like, all right, social media. And now I'm doing really well on some of the platforms on social media. Now it was like acting, so I want to do something with acting. That's my next. So I was like excited to have you in and talk a little bit about that today too.
Oh
so,
yes, absolutely.
I'm first of all so proud of you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
I've always. That's why when you agreed to do this, I was very excited because, like you said, I know you admittedly said, "Oh, I wasn't the best in your class." That again, like I said, there's a Maya Angelou quote that I talked about. I think before we were rolling, where it's like. They say people don't remember exactly what you said, but they remember how you feel. And I believe that is a two-way street, whether that's students versus teachers. And I just remember enjoying having you in class. I remember enjoying watching you enjoying being in class. Yeah. And that's the stuff that I'm missing now that I wish. So I wish I had more Morgans in my class, even if it meant they were getting C's. I wouldn't care. C's and D's equal degrees. So if people want to look you up, they want to go to a show, they want to see your poetry, where can they find you?
They can find me at Mo_the poet. That's MO_the poet. Yeah. I'm not the best at social media. I said earlier that it's really crazy that I'm doing poetry because it was absolutely on accident.
Yeah.
I was actually on a huge social media break for like 2 or 3 months, and I had done only 2 open mics, and then I did 1 open mic that was filmed, and one of my poems was one of the pieces that they released, and it actually went viral, and that is what started my poetry career.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I have done so very little to be a poet, and things have just really worked out for me, and I'm so lucky. I'm so unbelievably thankful because I didn't see this path for myself. And it didn't even go that crazy viral. It only sits at like a little over 30,000 views on Instagram, but still, I mean
that's a lot. 30,000. That's a lot of people viewing you. There's something to be said for that because they don't have to, and like the way that it all works, it's like it's guiding people that we're going to enjoy it, and that's all what we're all trying to do. My first episode when I did this podcast was I called it the tuning fork because I was like, that's how I want life to guide me. I want to know. I think we all have this like internal feeling when we're doing something and we know we're connecting, whether it's when you're writing that poetry, when you're performing that poetry, like there's a tuning fork going off that's saying, okay, I'm in the right direction. I need to keep going in this direction. And so I think that's what we're all just trying to figure out. We're all just, some people bury it so much that they can't even feel it or hear it anymore. And so, part of talking about some of the stuff I talk on here hopefully inspires some other people to dust off the cobwebs and put their ear to themselves a little closer to say, hey, maybe there is something out there that I just haven't figured out yet. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you. Maybe I'm a poet. Maybe I should.
You are a poet. You're definitely a storyteller, and you were such a creative teacher. So when I saw that you went into comedy a couple of years ago, and then just watching the progression on Facebook as you got more and more and more into it, I gotta say, I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you.
I'm proud of you because I think that is such a badass move, and I wish you truly all the best.
Oh, man. Well, thank you, Morgan, for coming on and jaywalking with me today. And guys, if you liked it, you know what to do. Share it, feed the algorithm, do all the things, show your enemies, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming.